Hello, everyone. We know it's about 1 minute before 10 a.m., at least on Pacific time. Thank you for joining our webinar. We will get started 1 minute after 10 a.m. Just hopping in a little early, we had some technical issues. We are hoping, hello, Dan, first one in the chat. Thank you for that. We want to make sure that you can hear our presenter. We had some technical difficulties on the background. So you're going to hear another voice besides mine in a second. And if we can get a couple folks confirming that you can hear our very fabulous partner, Kristin, chatting, that would be great. Take it away, Kristin.
Hi, everyone. Just testing that you're able to hear me.
All right, it looks like we can. Oh,
Oh,
thank
good.
you, everyone. Love it, love it, love it. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. I've been doing a horrible job of introducing myself, and so considering it's the last of the Success series, the Access series, our summer Access series, I'll start off by saying for the folks who don't know me, I am Tiffany Taylor on our University Success team, and I have had the honor of leading our summer series of webinars. Some of the names of attendees I see here, you all have been with us for almost all 5 sessions. This is the last of the summer series, so hopefully they are prepping you accordingly to launch into your incredible fall. Back to school is a very busy time at Handshake, as it is for you all, and I could not think of a better webinar to really end the series and kickstart your back to school time than find, recruit, train, and leverage student ambassadors in a virtual space. So thank you everyone for being here. Just some setting up before we continue. Yes, 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 you will receive a recording of this webinar after, it normally takes about 24 hours for us to send that out. And even your colleagues who registered and were not able to attend will get a copy of the recording. That's a good rule for you to think about as you look forward to attending other webinars. Even if you can't make it, register so we can send it to you and you can get all the yummy stuff that our partners are sharing or us along those webinars. But without further ado, Kristin is going to really share. She's one of our magicians of all things experiences, but what I really love is that this topic takes us into what we're all experiencing now, this virtual era of everything. And so want to give you all an opportunity to absorb everything that she's sharing with us. Please utilize the same question box on your panel that you just did to let us know that you can hear us, to start sending in questions as she's going along. We have an incredible Handshake army behind us, behind the webinar, trying to suss out those questions. There will be time at the end of Kristin's presentation to ask her some questions so we can prod her knowledge and years of wisdom on the platform, and specifically utilizing some of our features. So don't wait until the end. We certainly want to get in as many of those questions as possible. So let's dive in. Take it away, Kristin.
All right. Well, thank you, Tiffany. As you mentioned, this has really been a big transition for everyone. So initially, this entire topic would have taken place, I think, at the meetup, where we would not have been talking about training, finding, recruiting our students in a virtual space at all. But we have all shifted here, much like all of you have. And so it's been really exciting and stressful at the same time to think about this, and we're glad that we can share this topic with you all. So just wanted to start out with a little bit about who I am. I'm in my 16th year in higher ed, most of which has been in some way tangent to career services. I'd love to share some pictures of my children. So I have 3 boys, ages 6, 7, and 8, who have kept me busy being all things mom, teacher, daycare service, all of that during this time. In the middle of all this, received acceptance to an EDD program, which started this summer. So I am now back into the role of student, which I think is a great perspective to have as we're planning things for the fall. I can really put on my student hat and try to think, albeit differently than an undergrad, try to think more like a student every day. And the thing I wanted to share with you that maybe is most important, I think, it's easy to say that we're understaffed, but we're all perpetually understaffed. If we could all have all the staff we wanted all the time. This may not be as important a presentation, but it really was for me the focus of thinking through how can we do what we need to do differently, and the way that we arrived at a solution for that was really working with our talented students across our system. So just acknowledging that we all have a wish list, I think, for more staff, and in these times it's probably less likely that will happen as budgets are constrained and things shift. But we also have that same wish here at Kent State, and so students, I think, are one of the ways that we can do that, and I'll share more how we've been successful and what we hope to continue to do with our Student Ambassador program. So I'll start by sharing a little bit about Kent State. I think it's important in any webinar as you're maybe thinking about how you would adopt practice to recognize the type of institution that you are compared with the type of institution that might be sharing the information, meaning this certainly isn't a template. It's not a one-size-fits-all by any means, but want to give you some ideas that have worked for us, and hopefully you'll find ways to be able to apply them at your institution or with your programs. And then we'll move on to talk about ways that we have both found and identified, as well as actively or even passively recruited our student ambassadors into our fold. Some goals for the Student Ambassador program from our perspective is not to overcomplicate it. So I'm going to talk about the simplicity approach to this and how we think that simple has been best for all of us, the students, as well as our team, and then how to watch for impact. That's a really important part of all of this, and something that we should all do, but not just for us, for your ambassadors too, as they think about why for them, why would I want to participate in this kind of a program? They're also going to want to know how they're making a difference and what that impact might be. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And Tiffany mentioned it already. Certainly we have time at the end, but as we're going through this, we've built in some interaction, so there'll be some time for you to interact as well. But if there's a question or a spark to start a conversation, please, by all means, raise that hand or type that in the chat, and we will discuss on the fly, but we'll reserve time at the end too. So a little bit about us. We are a large multi-campus system with around 40,000 students. About 25,000 of those are undergraduate students, with the remaining spreading across our graduate, professional, and health campus with our College of Podiatric Medicine. We take up a large geographic area in the state of Ohio, from as far north as you can go on the New York-Pennsylvania border, all the way to Southeast Ohio, really along the eastern border of our state. We have about 40 career services staff across our system. That number ebbs and flows depending on the day, the week, the month, or the year. And we are in a decentralized, or what I like to call a distributed model. So I work with my team in our central university hub of career services, but we have folks who operate out of college-specific offices or on our campuses, and many of those folks end up wearing multiple hats. They also work in financial aid and in academic advising, but do career services as well. We all come together through what we call our Kent State Career Network, which is a committee, an organizational committee where we can share our best practices, and that kind of keeps us, moving forward with alignment. But we don't all have reporting model to each other. So we are very much distributed. I share that because this plays into some of how we found success. And when this all began, we had about 10 paid career peers, or students who worked on our staff and were paid to do, drop-ins or advising with students, or really the day-to-day work alongside of our advisors. And when we sat down and thought about, why did we want to have an ambassador program for our students, we really reflected on a lot of the wisdom that Kristin was sharing about leading indicators to outcome. Really meant that our students had to be active in Handshake, and they needed to be applying to positions in Handshake. And so we sat back and looked at that and said, well, what can we do? So our goal was really to increase those activations in our system. And we knew that we needed more help to be able to do that. We, with 40 staff across an 8-campus system, weren't reaching all of our students every day. but we knew that students were the biggest influencers we had on this campus. So we needed more help. So now there's a time for you all to think about your completions, your profile completions, and your activations on your campus. You're probably multitasking anyway, so if you can, go ahead and hop into your Handshake dashboard and take a look, and then complete our quick poll by telling us about what percentage, and there's some ranges, of your profile completions are completed in Handshake.
All right, I just launched the poll, so hopefully, look at that. They're all coming in. We typically stop the poll when at least 75% of the attendees have voted. So let's see, we're at 42. Keep it climbing, folks. Let's get our engagement numbers. And I love this. I hope you all are checking your activation rates often and utilizing that to drive actionable responses for you all, or sending emails in the platform. All right, we're kind of at the 60-second mark. It looks like voting has slowed down a bit. Kristin, we got 58%. I'm going to close the poll and let's hope it shows up. I can't guarantee it. This tells you all that this is only the second time I've done this.
All right, it did. Awesome. So as you can see, there's a wide range, but the bulk of us, more than 50% of us, fall into that 21 to 40% completion rate, and then another 15% are still hovering somewhere between 0 and 20%, with the remaining roughly quarter, a little more, maybe a third, at 41% or above. So why did I ask that question? You know, if you're thinking about what is something that a student ambassador can do, and you focus on a simple goal of profile completions or profile activations, I think we can all look and see that we still have some work to do in that area. So I just want you to hold on to the number for now. We wanted to kind of take that gauge because I also want to show you when you're thinking about outcomes, there are some different things at the end, so we'll revisit this topic, that you might think about in regards to your outcomes and how you look at the full dashboard in Handshake. So keep that number handy, what you responded to in the poll, and we'll come back to that. For now, what I want to transition to is really talking about ways that you can find and recruit these ambassadors on your campus, and some of the things that we did. So for us, we found that if we could partner with a student organization or organizations and or a peer leader training class or some other workshops that might already happen, that we had a large audience who was already engaged in connecting with their peers and other students. So for us, and I'll talk more in detail about this in an upcoming slide, we focused on our peer leader training course. This is a course that every student who wants to be in a peer leadership role, whether that be a student success leader with our first year experience course, or a volunteer liaison with our community engaged learning, or a resident assistant, has to take in our spring semester. So on average, there's around 600 students enrolled in this course every spring semester. And we were able to just kind of gather them all up and attend one of their already existing sessions to recruit these ambassadors. And we let them know that this would be something that we would be doing before they enrolled in the course. So in case this was one of the things that they wanted to do, it would also appeal to them as a reason to take this one credit course in the spring. But we started with the value of Handshake, and not necessarily our value, but what was the value to them. So we started by listening to them and trying to understand what they understood about Handshake. So in order to find them, we had to know what they understood. so that we could then recruit them into these roles. And the way that we did that was we talked about, their self-identification of level of comfort with the system. We specifically had them focus on profile, since what we wanted was profile activation and profile completion. And in a large group session on a Saturday with all 600 of them in one of our large auditoriums, we were able to have them tell us, do you identify as intermediate? Would you consider yourself a pro in Handshake? Do you think of yourself as a novice? And we just had them divide up so that they were moving around the room and kind of clustering in their self-identified group. So the next thing we could do was give our demo of Handshake, which might look like what you do when you go into a workshop, or it might be the video that you have up on your website. But what we wanted to do was say, now that you've self-identified with your level of comfort in the profile and with the system in Handshake, here's some of the things that we hope students will know. And then they could gauge, they could say, well, maybe I'm more comfortable than I thought I was, or maybe I know less than I thought I did. But we wanted them to have our understanding of what was important. So we walked through the system from top to bottom, if you will, really though focusing on all of the elements in the profile and what would get them the most up-to-date profile, how to keep the profile up-to-date. And the nice thing is we were able to show them too how Handshake gives that feedback on profile completion, things that you should keep doing to make your profile stronger. And once we did that, we actually asked those who felt more comfortable to work with someone who felt less comfortable. And right there in our session, go ahead and begin making updates to their profile. So we let them do some testing, in the safer space with each other and move in that way. So even from that day, I'm going to pause here and just talk about this one session that happened. Again, this was live in person with 600 people. We saw that many of our students who had identified as novice hadn't yet completed their profile. Now, we didn't know that because they told us. We knew that because we looked at our completion rate before we went into the session and then looked at it after, and we saw about a 10% bump from the amount of students who were in that room. So we weren't asking them to tell us, did they like the system? Were they using the system? We didn't want to do anything that would cause them, any anxiety around our expectation, but we wanted to know what they thought of Handshake and its value, and then give them some time to test it out. From there, we shared our goal. Why did we have you do this? And we talked about that leading indicator for their outcomes would be that they could apply for jobs, but they really couldn't apply for positions. And we use it for our on-campus employment as well. On-campus internships, co-ops, or full-time employment if their profile wasn't up to date. So we sort of worked backwards, got them understanding why, and then we allowed students who'd had that success. Many of these students were the ones who identified themselves as, pro, told their stories of success, and then they started sharing with the group, other things that they had done in Handshake, which I'll get into some of those a little bit later. But we really shifted them to a hands-on model after we shared their goal to keep going. And so that helped us. We also incentivized them. And in our case, and we're going to talk about what incentives might work on your campus, but for us, we knew even before the situation we're in now, we knew that we didn't have a budget to hire any more career peers. We kept our goal simple, but we knew that we wanted to do something. So we had actually worked with a group of students prior to coming into our ambassador program recruiting, and t-shirts was what they told us would work, and they were right. So we gave everyone a t-shirt to wear so they could wear it at all of their sessions as peer leaders, but really any other time. And for us, that was a really great positive for them. So we'll move on to the next slide, and I'll keep talking about our training and our program. But I want you to think now, at your institution, it may not be a t-shirt. So let's kind of make sure that we're thinking through that. And there's another poll coming up. What kind of incentives do you find work well at your institution?
All right, the votes are coming in even faster than the one before. We're at 52. And for folks who are asking for the N, all my assessment magicians out there, we have about 240 attendees. And I told you I'd try to stop the poll at 75% or at 60 seconds, whichever came first. All right, it looks like responses have slowed down and we're at that 60-second mark. I will share those results now.
All right, thank you. So kind of all over the board, an even mix really of what I would call those casual kind of t-shirt giveaways, sweatshirts, and then some sort of hourly wage or stipend. And really, I think what's important is knowing your audience, your students, what's going to work for them, and communicating that upfront as a part of the incentive to be part of your ambassador program. And so we did that. Our students knew that they were going to get t-shirts and that our expectation was that they would work on their profile and be ambassadors for us. So we were very forthright with them that we didn't have funding to give them either campus cash, which we call flash cash, or a stipend, but that it would be a t-shirt. And of course, that's going to look different depending on the number of ambassadors you have. We ended up with 600 because every student signed on board. So it will look different depending on your number and your institution. But kind of circling back to the outcome. So we went through our training. We had them work with each other to update their Handshake profile and work together to see that. And here's an image. This is the auditorium that we were in. So that day was really, really great. They were all over the place, novice, pros, intermediates, working together, thinking about their profile. And we wanted to work with them really on what was the outcome for us. But what I want to talk about is we had a training partnership. There are lots of things that we wanted our ambassadors to know how to do, but we didn't necessarily need to train them. We kept our message simple, which was we want you to know how to get into Handshake, talk to a student about the value, and show them how to update their profile so that they can apply for jobs. And we threw a couple of extra things in there, like peer messaging, which I'll talk about and how important that is. But our partners in the peer leader training group were able to talk about communicating and approaching students and having a visual presence on campus and really overall how to be a leader, which meant we were able to accomplish this in a 3-hour training session as a part of an ongoing 10-week course that happens for our peer leaders. And I talked about being perpetually understaffed at the beginning. That was how we expanded our ecosystem. We relied on other partners who were already doing some of that other work to make it manageable for us. So maybe there's not a peer leader training on your campus, but maybe it's with something that happens with student organization leaders or student government leaders or fraternity and sorority life, where these other topics, again, around communication or outreach or student interaction are already happening, that you can say, I'd like to come in and talk about another leadership opportunity, and as part of that, I'd like to wedge in this conversation about Handshake because as student leaders on our campus, we think they can be influencers, to the rest of our student population on the value of the system, which we know it's impossible for all of our staff to have these conversations with our entire student body. So beyond those kind of 3 elements that we had, which was profile, activation, and completion, we also did, like I said, squeeze in the value of peer messaging. And so I know for us, when peer messaging first was revealed by Handshake, we had some of those kind of itchy feelings where we weren't really sure about it. We didn't really understand our role in it. It's not happening with us, we thought. It's something that students are doing with each other, kind of outside of us. And then we stepped back and we watched our students in this very first training session, which was now nearly 2 years ago, get really excited about it. And we started to think about how it really was happening with us. And so in turn, we became the biggest fans of peer messaging because we knew that if our students were in fact using the system to communicate with each other about internships and positions and how to successfully interview with, in our case, it might even be just an on-campus position, interview with a department on campus or for this internship, then they really were helping us to effectively accomplish our goal, because in order to participate in peer messaging, you needed to have an active profile and have your profile up to date. So for us, I understand, that we're not alone in this. There were some feelings that happened around peer messaging, but we really see it as one of the greatest tools that our peers can use with each other. So our ambassadors are really ramping up the peer messaging. You'll see it later. We have a really high percentage of students who check that they want to be available for peer messaging in Handshake. And so we know that that isn't actually a direct result of anything that we did as a staff necessarily, because we had a little bit of fear about this, but that our students did on their own. And so we benefit from it. So again, the key of this slide is that you want to really think about who are your training partners and let them do some of the other things. And as a result, that frees up your time to really make the training for your ambassadors be about Handshake itself and not some of the other pieces. So when I'm thinking about communication, they're helping them write great peer messaging within Handshake and communicate with each other. I didn't necessarily have to do that. So again, we've talked about this. We thought about 3 goals, 3 tasks that, we're not paying them to do this. They're doing this as student leaders from our organization and for the t-shirt, that we wanted them to focus on profile development. They essentially came up with goal number 2 because of their excitement about peer messaging, use peer messaging, and they have, and then make referrals. So what's been really nice is they make referrals to our office, to our drop-ins, to our career peers. We weren't expecting them to become trained career advisors or to know how to look up, every contact information, or it's even okay if they were to say, I'm not sure what events are happening right now, but career exploration and development can help you. So we kept it simple for them. You could certainly have an expanded ambassador program, but for us, again, with the way that we could compensate for this or incentivize, we really wanted to just focus on 3 simple tasks, which has been really successful as we launched now our 2nd year and are getting ready to go into our 3rd year with this group with peer leadership training. And then impact. We talked about that day I was able to look at our profile completions, but over time we've also been able to look at our profile completions. And so I've screenshot this. If you're not sure how to find it, you can find it in your analytics dashboard under student engagement. There's also your main dashboard when you log into Handshake. But this one breaks it down a little bit more. And so we were able to see our peers tend to be undergrads, that we saw a rate, bumping up. It compares against your peer institutions. And so we could compare ourselves. But even when we looked at this, we thought, well, we haven't really done what we set out to do. We have increased, but we're still in the 25% range of profile completion. So I want you to think about impact flexibly. This doesn't mean that we still don't have the goal now that we've onboarded another group of 600 peer leaders this spring to further increase profile completions, but it allows us some targets. So this dashboard will even go, deeper. I can find out, is it students in this college that I need to target? Are there students with this major that I need to target? So we're doing all of that. But on the next slide, it's going to show you your Handshake dashboard. What we really then began to focus on were the campus profiles, the number of students, our percentage of students who have opted to make that profile public to other students and are then thereby using peer messaging. When we saw that number take a huge leap overnight, really, we knew that we were doing something right, and that's what we were able to communicate back to our ambassadors, that yes, we still want profile completion to go up, but for the folks who you've influenced to complete their profile, they're logging in, they're making this choice to share their profile publicly and have these interactions, keep up the good work. We didn't want our staff or our students to think, celebrating the small win, I guess is my point, is we want to celebrate those wins as we move along. And it's okay to be flexible and then shift your goal and think of a new strategy, which we are doing to still get that profile completion to go up. So I think you have to use all the data that's available to you in tandem to think about what the best strategy for you. So the reason I had you look at your profile completion rate, and we shared that in the poll earlier, was in case it's not where you want it to be. We had folks, the majority of us are less than 50% profile completion. Also look at your activity snapshot. See if there are other areas that speak to you, that are standing out, and what can you glean from that, and where could you maybe see a way for your ambassadors to have an impact, or your staff as they're working with students? How can they have an impact? So I know that we've
Kristin,
yes.
I just wanted to share a selfish plug, if I might. One of my favorite features in Handshake, folks, is that you can, in your managed students field, sort by profile completion. And so you are actually really able to take an active step in reaching out to students who haven't completed their profile and say, hey, a semester has gone by. Have you added your student organizations? Have you added your most recent projects? And so you can do some proactive nudges by majors, by year. Profile completion, we have seen. I'm going to try before the end of the webinar. If not, we'll make sure it goes up in the follow-up. Handshake has put out a lot of information about what we know and have collected about what profile completion means to our employers. We know that they are being messaged more, students who complete their profiles. So I'm going to try to get that link plugged in our chat so you all can read up on that if you haven't already. But this is one of those low-hanging fruit, easy outreach for you to targeted outreach for you to do with your students when it comes to completion. So yes, I want to celebrate Kristin with her fabulous 61 and growing, but I know we can see in the messages that some of you have smaller numbers, and that's fine. Your number is yours. What I want to be the takeaway is that you can provide, you can now build action from those numbers and grow it to whatever you want your goal to be. It might just be to increase by 2% by the end of the quarter or semester, and that's fine. But what I want you to do is actually take away the action and working towards increasing what that profile completion is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Tiffany. And as I pulled up my own speaker notes, I also am reminded that I wanted to share here too, just as you did, your number is your number. And even beyond your ambassadors, think of just easy ways, the emails, the targeted emails to those who haven't completed a profile. If you're doing now probably a webinar, but maybe in the past a workshop, the first thing that you can have your presenter do is have folks get on their Handshake mobile app and go ahead and start their profile today to increase those. We would do at our fairs in person just a Handshake activation station and have folks come over right away. And really what it did was gave them a way to calm into or ease into the fair. They were just interacting with someone from our staff at a laptop, going ahead and setting up their profile. And also, I've mentioned that we have our student employment running through Handshake. If you can connect, if that's not your office, it is our office that oversees student employment at Kent State. But if it's not, work with your financial aid or payroll or whoever oversees student employment and have those positions, if you can, posted on Handshake, because it's a great way to engage students right away with that relevancy of something to do. And sometimes they don't always see what that something is, but something to do right away in the system as a first year student, or even as a prospective student. Our students can apply to on-campus positions at the point that they are admitted. So I think there are a number of things, and as Tiffany mentioned, Handshake does a great job through the analytics of helping you identify those students. And I know she's going to drop the link in, but we know it's like an 80% increase in engagement from employers with just 3 sections of the profile, and I can't remember off the top of my head which 3 they are, but sharing those tidbits even as those links come available with your ambassadors, the more you can engage them in the messaging that Handshake is sending out too, they start to feel more confident in their own use of the system, and it's easy for them to share that with the students. So thank you for all of that, Tiffany. So I know we've all had to switch gears a lot in recent months. So I do want to acknowledge that I spent, a lot of time talking about what we did, and a lot of that was face to face. All of our previous training sessions were in person. We distributed T-shirts, for example, live. We did lots of activations, the stations I talked about at the fair, and we had a different budget than we do today. So what we have found is, again, by partnering with our peer leader training, we are able to easily transition into remote training because it's something that's happening with us as a partner, and we don't have to develop the full training regimen, for the 12 weeks. We're coming into a pre-developed curriculum. Certainly, I think our students appreciate some ability to connect with each other in these trainings. So we've worked through some wrinkles. For example, when I say, can you help each other with a profile, it's a little bit more challenging when they're not sitting together in a room, but they can screen share and they can give advice or pass screenshots back and forth. One of our biggest challenges, I want to acknowledge this, is we're not on campus at this point. We are making our return to fall, but to incentivize our students who went through our training in the spring, we are wrestling with how do we distribute materials to them? How do we get them their T-shirt? If they're not on campus, will it matter? So these are real questions that we have running through our heads. Our fairs for the near-term future, maybe longer-range future, will be virtual. So we're thinking about how to get students to engage. Now, the good news is, to participate in some of the virtual fair activities, they need to have their profile set up, but how do we get that messaging out and let our students be the influencers as we're doing that prep for our fall fairs? And like so many of you, I'm sure, our budget is limited. So we're also thinking about, when we run out of these T-shirts, how long will we not have another incentive? And so just being creative as you're thinking about the difference between what was and what might be is important. The key to this virtual engagement, though, is leveraging what you already have. So our Center for Student Involvement already has some virtual pieces where ambassadors can go and message other students, letting students craft the messages that our office sends out, be it a newsletter or a targeted email, so that it has a student voice. And I think key to the ambassadors is just communicating with them about, what's happening because they're ambassadors. What are we seeing? Our numbers trending up? Or, in our case, it wasn't necessarily the profile completions, but letting them know, giving them that pat on the back that we have a 61% public profile rating. So they are feeling connected to the impact. And then maybe most importantly is letting them share their stories. And sometimes that's peer messaging, and sometimes it's letting them have, that testimonial to talk about what they found, how Handshake helped them. I found this on Handshake. And even though I think we would all prefer to do that in a face-to-face setting where we can interact with our students, or, I would love the day where I can go stand in that auditorium again with 600 students versus the 60 that it's going to be able to hold in the fall. It's not impossible to do this, I think, really successfully virtually too. It's a changed format. And in some ways, some of the lifts become a little easier because I don't have to have everyone in one room, and I've made it more accessible to more people to be able to train them, because a lot of what we're doing is also asynchronous. I can record a message and they can listen to it at any time. So as I mentioned, we're going to roll into year 3 of this. We're still working with our peer leader training group as they are planning for their training, and I think that's the key, situating yourself with or next to something that's already happening with student leaders on your campus, and then giving maybe new opportunity for leaders to join that development program because they find this to be something of appeal, this being Handshake, something of appeal to them, has really been a key for us. So I see the link to has been, the blog link has been shared. The 3 must-haves on your profile is now in the chat. So definitely want to be able to share that with your students and your ambassadors. I think that's a key for your ambassadors to have as well. But thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, of course, Kristin. I think, again, why I had started off the top of the webinar talking about why I thought it was so important to end with your webinar was specifically because I know when we have product releases, you all are marketing all your own services. Handshake is the start of school, all the things that we can forget that I know can miss some of our partners, that profile completion and activation rates being top of mind. So I love the idea of you highlighting how you're utilizing student ambassadors for that. So we are at the Q&A section, and maybe Kristin can share some of her top 2 takeaways. We were able to answer some of them in ongoing, and I have a couple here for you. But before I get there, just want to let you all know, if you enjoyed this webinar, we do have others upcoming. You will get a PDF download of Kristin's presentation with the recording, but also to let you know, you can always stay abreast of more of our partner webinars by going to our webinar page. If you'd like to stay in the loop, don't have the conversation end here. If you go into your help drop down in your Handshake, you can get to the community, and there actually is a chat room going on about student engagement. So you can find out more about actions like what Kristin shared and then some. Really would love to see the conversation start back up with kind of what are the creative approaches you all are taking during the pandemic. We want to learn from you. You all are the ones on the ground. What isn't working? Share some of those not so great ideas with others too, so we all can continue to learn from each other. And if you follow the announcements, you don't have to go back in there. They'll just always come to your inbox, and we do send those out bi-weekly. It's our partner newsletter. There is Kristin's contact email, so we'll make sure to leave that up so that you all can continue to ask her about their virtual engagement or their student ambassador training program as you see fit. So Kristin, one of the questions that came through, are your ambassadors paid or unpaid? We have that question from Jennifer.
Yeah, great question. They are not paid. So as part of our partnership with Peer Leader Training, we in fact infused this into the training, so it thereby became a requirement of the Peer Leader Training course. So our ambassadors are not paid, and at this point, the t-shirt is their incentive.
Can you share a bit more about what that, I think you covered it a bit, but maybe just re-sharing, what does the training of the ambassadors look like? How long it is? Who's doing the training?
Yeah, so since it's infused in the Peer Leader Training course, which is a 1 credit hour course that happens for all of our student leaders on our campus, so anyone who wants to apply to a student leadership role must go through it. It's about 45 contact hours over the spring semester. Several of those hours happen over 3 Saturdays, which are about 7-hour days, so about 21 of those 45 hours happen. We go into specifically to train on Handshake one of those Saturday sessions and spend about half of the time with them. So we are really laser focused on Handshake during that 3.5-hour session and their comfortability with Handshake, while the rest of the training that's happening over the course of the spring semester is focused on leadership development, communication, teamwork, all of these other competencies that will be necessary for them to have as both a successful student leader, but also as an ambassador for us. But our training and our staff then requirement to interact happens over about a 3.5-hour period. We do have, so the course is also taught by students who previously went through the course with some staff liaisons helping. So we do also meet with those student instructors the evening before, so usually it's a Friday evening before we go into that Saturday session, and we give them a refresher course. They would have gone through the course at some point in the past anyhow, but we give them a refresher course, and they also become then double ambassadors, if you will. They also become our eyes and ears and help throughout the remaining time. Now, we're in contact with the staff who oversee the peer leader training course for all of the semester, and they send messaging to us and from us. So we're in communication with these students. Again, there's 600 of them, so there are a lot, and our time with them is relatively short, but they are able to communicate with us through a variety of ways. The time we spend with them, however, is again just about 3.5 hours.
Thank you. How is your recruiting done for your Handshake ambassadors? Do you always get a large amount of applicants? Who are the pool of these students typically from?
Yeah, so again, because we're partnering with peer leader training, we are availing this opportunity as part of going through the training course. If you're going through the training course because you want to become an RA or be a volunteer liaison, as a bonus, you also get to be a Handshake ambassador. So our recruiting happens in tandem with that course. Now, we have had students who haven't gone through the leadership training course who've said, I'm seeing these ambassadors now. How can I do that? If it's a fall semester and the course isn't happening until spring, we'll do an abbreviated version. We want all of our students to be ambassadors for Handshake, so we'll go through an abbreviated version of that training so that said student can become an ambassador. But everything that we're doing is in tandem with another leadership activity on campus, and so typically there are around 700 students who might apply for the peer leader training course and about 600 to 650 who complete it. And again, not all of them necessarily follow through on all of our 3 goals. They're not all as active as some, but all 600 of them become ambassadors.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. For folks who were asking, or if maybe you haven't opened the link yet that we shared about the profiles, the 3 core areas that our research at Handshake has shown that employers are looking for is job type, cities, and roles. Just a really good best practice that we often share with our career service partners is build out your own account. I love the idea of when you are screen sharing and one-on-one with students, what better way than you filling out your student account so they have it as a point of reference, right? So that they can see, well, what should I put here and how do I really create a robust profile? And you all learn by example too. If there are areas that you're struggling with, then you know your students might struggle with as well, and how you're coming up with ideas of what you should put there to really have a robust profile. So I definitely suggest building out your own so you can use that as your own show of example of a profile, especially when you're meeting one-on-one with students or hosting a whole virtual session on how to fill out your profile and really hammer it in of the things that are unique to your institution, right? Oh, you participated in this volunteer experience, include that here. Here is what you could include at the end of the semester, and think about those nudges. I do want to share out one of the questions that we did answer privately. Someone had asked about sorting by profile completion by labels. You heard me mention one of my favorite features is utilizing who I am going to email to in the manage student page. Yes, first of all, there's so many tabs there, but yes, when you filter by profile completion, you are then able to select any labels that you all have that are unique to your institution. Maybe it's veterans, maybe it's athletes, maybe it's different orgs, whatever group that you would like to segment that in. And in fact, we highly recommend it, right? We don't like to be mass emailed to, so you know your students don't like to either. So the more you can target that, it is certain the increase you're going to get in ability for them to activate and also complete their profile. All right. Did students sign up at the leadership course session to be an ambassador? How does the opt-in process look like? Thanks, Kate.
Great question. So they are opted in, so it's really an opt-out option for them because of the partnership. Now, certainly this may not work at your institution, but in our partnership with the course developers, so the staff who teach the course, it was decided that part of what we would do is have them all be ambassadors. And then if there were any concerns, they could opt out. Now, going into our third year, we've seen very little opt out because we've built it in a way that I think they all get so excited about it. But certainly, I think it might be, needed. There might need to be tweaks at your institutions where they would opt in, and you might want to have a separate application, for example. But all of these students have already gone through a process to become student leaders somewhere else. So they filled out an application. We didn't want to have redundancy in that process, and we wanted to show that trust in our campus community. So they're in fact opting out, and that's sort of my point about not everyone is as active. We're not monitoring have they contacted 10 students this week or 100 students this week. We simply gave them those 3 goals of this is what we want you to work on as an ambassador. We want to make sure that you are comfortable influencing positively your peers' interactions on Handshake, and one of the ways that you can do that is through peer messaging, and then certainly empowering them to know that we want them to refer to our staff. They don't have to know everything either about Handshake or career development in order to be a successful ambassador. So long way of saying it's an opt-out program for us.
Great. We have another one here. How do you keep track of who is an ambassador? Is it something you validate in your office, or is it just anyone who wants to can?
Yeah, mostly because of the course enrollment, we have the roster of who we have as an active ambassador. Again, because they've actually enrolled in a 4-credit course. Now we do have, again, those one-offs who didn't get enrolled for whatever reason in the 1-credit course and have an interest, and so that becomes an add-on to that list. But we are utilizing that roster as our tracking system.
I think there's an overarching piece that certainly Kristin is leveraging here, and we continue to share and see with partners. A lot of executive directors share with me that a big part of how you do some of the work that you do, and you all know this, is getting buy-in, right? Whether it's faculty buy-in, this course that Kristin is referring to, having your president at orientation able to say, hey, get on Handshake, complete that profile. And I know that that capital is hard. I myself worked at institutions for more than 15 years, but getting that buy-in in small bites means that your students aren't just hearing about Handshake and profile completion just from you. They're hearing it from coaches, they're hearing it from faculty, other staff, partnering with RAs, whatever that looks like. But definitely institution buy-in is super important. Kristin, are there any experimentations or new strategies you hope to try virtually or on campus with your student ambassador program that you didn't share with us?
Yeah, I think we're thinking about launching into our virtual career fairs and having our ambassadors support, what we might have thought of as like our resource table if we were in person, trying to still have that activation station available, but in a new way. So a lot of these are underdeveloped, or we just haven't even wrapped our heads around them, but we know peer-to-peer messaging, and not necessarily peer messaging in Handshake, but letting our ambassadors drive the language of the targeted emails is something that we're really gonna move ahead with more full throttle in the fall semester. So that, again, Tiffany, you just kind of made the point, the message has to come from beyond us, and it has to be authentically influenced by their peers. So it's going to be a more of that. I also think we'll do hangouts to connect with our ambassadors. We used to pass them in our student center or pass them in our Center for Undergraduate Excellence, and we know that won't happen in the same way. So I think we'll be working with the staff of our peer leader training course just to see how can we hang out with the ambassadors, because we also want to know what new things have they found in Handshake that maybe we're unaware of. So I think those would be kind of a top 2 or 3 for us as we move towards fall.
Well, Kristin, thank you very much. Thank you all for continuing to attend. And I hope some of you all here come up with great ideas of your own. Share them with us, share them with your relationship manager, share them in the community. That's how we all grow and build what we're doing. So thank you all for your incredible work that you're doing on the ground in service to students. Kristin, thank you for taking time out of everything that's on your plate to just share everything that's happening at Kent State with us. We are so grateful for your partnership.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for spending some time with me today.
Have a good day, everyone.